Hello, everyone. How have you been? All right. I could see people joining in. Yes, settle in, please. Great to see all of you. I'm really glad you have made it today. And as we know, over the last few weeks, we have spoken about emotional suppression. Then we gradually worked upon nervous system, survival patterns, then a lot of other confusions like identity confusion, emotional exhaustion, then stored emotional responses. And today's conversation connects deeply to all of it. And today's conversation is something we often face, and we don't know what exactly is happening with the body. Why do I say that? It is because many people today, I would say, are not only physically tired, they are emotionally detached from their inner world, from themselves, while they are doing all the other work. And that state is what many people are unknowingly calling as normal life. And we want to understand, like we are going to understand today, that burnout is not always caused because you are doing too much. Sometimes burnout happens because for too long you have been emotionally abandoning yourself while continuing to perform to ensure everything around keeps going. In spite, you have been internally screwing yourself completely. Yes, when we sit on this situation for a long time, you are indirectly harming yourself. And with this, I would like you to write on screen, are you, like, have you been much tired even after resting for a while? Has that ever happened that you feel so tired even you have rested probably few hours together? Now, let us describe, something to you. I want to tell you, like I said, maybe you put that across in the comments or maybe just in your mind, and just be true to yourself whether this looks familiar. Like I just asked you one comment to share. Let me explain this. Now, when you say, I'm giving you a scenario, you wake up, you have slept for almost 10 hours, maybe 8 hours, 10 hours, maybe, and you are already tired. Not groggy tired, not I need coffee tired. Tired in a way that sits behind your eyes and not in your bones and doesn't shift no matter whatever you do. Has that happened anytime? Like you get through the day, you check the boxes, you do what needs to be done. However, you are doing it from somewhere far away. Like you're watching your own life through some kind of a, frosted glass. And situations like things that used to matter don't. Things that used to feels flat now. You catch yourself wondering, when was the last time was that you felt genuinely excited about something, or say genuinely present in that moment, or say even you are genuinely yourself. And the frightening part is nothing catastrophic happened. There's no single reason to point to. You just silently feel that emptiness somewhere which you can't explain. That is burnout. And what I'm going to tell you today will completely change how you understand it and why everything you have tried to recover from it has only probably partially worked, to be very, you know, apt here. Because the world will tell you burnout is about doing too much, about needing a holiday, about better time management, or stricter boundaries, or more sleep. However, nobody tells you what the neuroscience has been showing us for the last 15 years is that burnout at its deepest level is not a productivity problem at all. It is an emotional disconnection problem. Yes, it is. And you cannot rest your way out of disconnection, that is, emotional disconnection. You have to reconnect your way out of it. Now, let me ask you, to the audience here, on the scale of, say, 1 to 10, how tired are you right now in a way that nothing to do with the sleep? Drop your number in the comments. Don't judge your number by any chance. And don't think that others are going to judge you either. Can you scale that? Because even if you're not comfortable sharing the numbers, just be true to yourself again. Be honest. How do you rate yourself right now on the scale of 1 to 10? That's again the data. And for those who are joining me for the first time, I'm Ishita Bakchi. I'm a life coach specializing in emotional intelligence, a counseling psychologist, a DMIT counselor, and I also work with healing practices like pranic, Reiki, and crystal healing. And what I really focus, or what my work really focuses on, is exactly the layer of exhaustion we are talking about today. The kind that doesn't respond to the conventional rest, conventional advice, or say conventional self care. Let me give you a great example from my life. Like, probably, I say 15 years back or so, there was one period where I love traveling. I love to visit a lot of places. I love to, meet people or go in groups and hang out with friends. However, there was certain time when, you know, even though I was going out, I was, taking that time off from my work, not because that exhaustion, just to have fun. I was not able to do that. And I really don't hesitate or feel ashamed to talk about this because that's how that makes me much capable to talk about it and share the experiences and the ways I have overcome that. Because you be somewhere, however, you are not mentally, physically present somewhere. you even though you have loads of fun, everybody around is having, like, even you are engaged into those fun. However, inside you, you are not connecting. And I still remember, I spoke to mom that I don't know, I'm not able to be fully excited in this environment. And yes, because definitely these awarenesses are not that prevalent to everybody. So the only thing which I heard back then was, you must be tired, maybe give it a day or two. However, I somehow always been a curious person. Whenever something happens to me or somewhere else, I try to dig down, not the usual way of searching Google and trying to find answers. Trust me, not that way. Because ideally speaking, you can't be a doctor to treat your medicines by checking some information from the site. However, you can try to find out what kind of patterns, what kind of situations are certain things which probably is coming as a repetitive pattern, and what are these basically. And that's where I started revealing about it. I started getting to know about it. And that's why I say that's where my work depends upon. I help people to understand their lives at the level of the disconnection, whether it is from yourself, from your purpose, from the felt sense of being alive in your own life. And nobody has to be, ashamed of these events or situations that you come across. We need to start talking about it openly. And I did work with multiple people who discussed with me because they had fallen apart, because they had simply gone numb, functional on the outside, some way or the other, hollow from the inside. Yeah, you stop feeling anything. And the work that actually brought them back was never just better habits or boundary setting. It was always returning to your emotional aliveness. That is what we begin today. So we are on day 25, 5 days into the week of transformation. We have gone into the body, into identity, into relationships. Today, we go into the system that underpins all of it. That is the survival biology that, when it runs too long without rest, creates the state we call burnout. And most importantly, we go into what actually reverses it. Yes. So let me share another experience from one of my client. Again, uh, this story is about a teenage. She was around 14 to 15 years old. When her parents spoke to me, they shared that on paper she was good. Like, she was doing everything that was expected on the charts. Probably competitive swimmer, then probably class representative. Like, she was doing everything that was expected from her. The kind of child teachers describe as probably mature behind, like beyond her years. Her parents weren't worried about her performance. They were worried because she had started saying, when asked how she was feeling about anything, and that's the scariest answer I could hear is, I don't know. Fine. I don't really feel anything about it. And it's not a matter of joy. I mean, not to feel anything. This is, or this can be serious if not taken care. And I remember sitting along with her in my first session. She was perfectly composed. She could articulate her thoughts. Um, and I asked her, "What do you enjoy?" And she thought for it for a long time. I mean, genuinely long time. Because ideally, you know, if somebody asks me that, okay, what do you love? I say, I love singing and writing. So this is something comes automatically. I mean, that's what it happens. Whatever you like, it comes automatically. And not the pause of someone, probably this kind of pause, I would say, searching genuinely hard for an answer and coming up as empty. And later, after a point, she said, I used to enjoy swimming. And now it just feels like another thing I have to finish from my to do list. I asked, when did it stop feeling like something that you loved so much? She looked at me very steadily, maybe very calmly, and said, I honestly don't remember. So, for 14 to 15-year-old kid, and the felt sense of joy in her own life had been so gradually getting depleted that she don't even or she couldn't even remember the last time it was there in her life. When I mapped her daily life with her daily life with her, what I found was a child who had been in a state of low grade chronic stress for years. So it's not like trauma crisis, just the constant, relentless pressure of performing, achieving, meeting expectations, managing the emotional atmosphere of her home, being the easy one, the responsible one, and XYZ added in the list. No space to feel, no permission to not be okay, no room to simply be 14 and uncertain and messy and unfinished. So, her cortisol system, the body's primary stress response, had been running at an elevated levels for so long that the brain had done the only thing it could do was to survive. It has completely shut her down, like probably numb. She could not feel anything in that. And again, not from weakness, not from ingratitude, from sheer biological self protection. Her, her brain had essentially said, if we can't escape the pressure, we will stop feeling it. And what she was experiencing at 14 is exactly what millions of adults are experiencing right now. They call it burnout, they call it exhaustion, they call it, I don't know who I am anymore. And underneath all of those names, it is the same thing. It is the same thing, a nervous system that has been in survival mode for so long that it quietly, systematically switched off the capacity to feel anything. And that wasn't strictly necessary. Joy, curiosity, excitement, desire, connection, all switched off just to conserve the energy for surviving. That is not alive. That is a very sophisticated way of not dying. It might sound very, blunt, but yes, that it is true. And that girl in our work together for uh, probably for a few months came back slowly, carefully, with the right support. Her nervous system learned it was safe enough to feel again. The day she came in and said, "Yes, I swam this morning and it felt like mine again." And that was not a small moment. That was a nervous system finally cautiously stepping back out of survival. And I would say something, um, this is what is the challenge. And again, I really appreciate when the parents understand this disconnection, a simple sign, some simple sign, because everything shows a sign. It's just that sometimes we cannot understand, sometimes we ignore, sometimes we feel it's not needed or necessary. And I appreciate people who understand this and look for right support at the right time, because emotional connection, numbness, not feeling anything, whatever, it's okay, it's not a good sign. And finally, her nervous system, finally cautiously stepping back out of that survival. Now, I would like to know from you, my audience, when did you last feel genuinely excited about something? Not in the mode of performing. Actually, that something lit you. Let me share my experience. My experience of first time riding Royal Enfield through the empty road, and probably yes, my husband was handling, definitely, because of my short height I am little bit worried about that. But then that moment, that experience was unbelievable. It was so lovely that I drove, I mean, I ride that bike for a so long stretch, and it actually gave me that excitement which I wanted for long. So I want to hear from you. What was that moment where you felt genuinely excited about something? Please, that can be shared. And again, you don't have to judge whether it is like 10 years back or 5 years back and so on. It's okay. And if you still can't remember anything, maybe drop any sign, like a candle or a light, whatever you find in the comment section from the emojis. Just try to put in the chat, and then that's it. That okay? It's okay that you don't remember. That's absolutely fine. And we talk about it, how to find it. Okay? So not to worry. And let us, like in all my sessions, I do touch the core teaching, the science of burnout and survival mode. So see, these all researches has been done years back, and it's just that I'm trying to put up placing in terms of learning information so that you are well aware. Okay, so again, our type, our understanding will be in certain parts. The part one focuses on cortisol, the hormone that was designed for sprints, not marathons. So let's talk about what is actually happening in the body when you burn out. It begins with cortisol, your body's primary stress hormone. I think by now, with lots of information overload, this cortisol hormone everybody would have known that whenever we talk about stress, yeah, cortisol is doing it. And however, cortisol is not your enemy. It is one of the most brilliant biological systems you possess. Now, again, there will be certain technical terms like, again, you don't have to remember everything. However, just I want to put that across what I actually got from the information that neuroscience behind this cortisol and the HPA axis, that is hypothalamic pituitary adrenal, that is an HPA axis, is the brain's central stress response system. Okay, so we'll just call it HPA. You don't have to recall it, just understand what it is. So when the brain perceives a threat, that is physical, emotional, or psychological, the hypothalamus triggers the release of cortisol from the adrenal glands. So we know that yes, this is released when the stress comes, right? We just remember that. Now, cortisol is designed for acute, short term stress. It sharpens focus, mobilizes energy, suppresses non essential functions like digestion and immune response, and prepares the body to act. So, in small doses and with adequate recovery, cortisol is profoundly useful. The problem occurs when the perceived threat never ends. Now, it can be in many scenario that we talked about in my session. So, because today is day 25, a lot of things I have covered, like, those unpredictable behavior, those sudden raise or tone change or of the voice and all that, lot of things. So, the thing is that when the perceived threat never ends, when the chronic emotional pressure due to all of that, the unprocessed grief, it can be related to anything, and the relentless performance demands, or say the unacknowledged internal conflicts, keeps the HPA axis in a state of continuous activation. So, sustained elevated cortisol damages the hippocampus, the brain's memory and emotional processing center. This reduces the prefrontal cortex function, depletes serotonin and dopamine, and gradually begins to blunt the limbic system's capacity for emotional response. Now, let me explain this. You don't have to remember all of this, but I'm just putting that across because whatever we are talking about is neuroscience. So nobody can talk that no, this is not something relevant. So, have you realized something that whenever there is an emotional strain or long term situations that have been troubling you, have you realized that we often say that, okay, I've started forgetting things. I'm not able to focus on what, I have to recall. My memory is getting impacted. Have you heard all of this situation anytime? Yes, that's what we're talking about, right? This, because of this damages the hippocampus, the brain's memory and emotional processing center reduces this prefrontal cortex function. And the brain, attempting to protect itself from cortisol's toxic long term effects, essentially turns down the emotional volume across the board. It slowly reduces. And this is the neurobiology of burnout and of emotional disconnection. And this is what happened to that girl. Not something catastrophic event. Years of cortisol running at a low, however, constant elevation mode. because her nervous system was never given that enough recovery time between the demands. And these days, what happens ideally with the kids, especially when the teens, when they reach to some level where they have to attempt for the boards or some higher examinations, that few of the time it becomes so much pressure for all of them to switch between the tasks that there is no recovery time for them to actually breathe. And the brain's response was elegant and devastating in equal measure. It turned down the emotional circuitry to protect itself. Joy went first, then curiosity, then desire, and then the feeling of being present in your own life. What's left is functional, that is, competent, sometimes even impressive to the outside world. However, inside, it's hollow. So remember one thing, burnout is not laziness, it's not weakness, it's the brain emergency protocol, shutting down everything non essential to keep you functional. Otherwise, you will break down. Your entire structure will break, like you entirely will break down. The tragedy is that what it shuts down first is the very thing that makes life feel worth living, unfortunately. Emotions are the things that keeps you going, right? Everything is connected to emotions. Now let's go to the part 2, that is the survival mode when the emergency never ends. So there is a phrase which I use with almost every burnout client I work with, and it usually makes them cry, not from sadness, however, from recognition. So the line goes there like this. So you have been an emergency for so long that you forgot it was an emergency. So again, let me just reiterate. You have been an emergency for so long that you forgot that it was a real emergency. And let me share some more research that on chronic stress and emotional blunting from Dr. Herbert Benson and medical school, Harvard Medical School. So, research from the Harvard Medical School on chronic stress responses demonstrates that when the stress response is sustained over a period of days, months, or say years, the brain undergoes measurable structural and functional changes. Yes, it does. And the prefrontal cortex, responsible for emotional nuance, yeah, self reflection, creativity, and meaning making, shows reduced gray matter density. And the amygdala conversely becomes hyperactive. So, again, don't think about the technical words to it. The result in a person is that who is simultaneously emotionally blunted in the upper registers, joy, wonder, inspiration, love, and hyperactive in the lower registers, that is anxiety, irritability, dread. So why I say emotionally blunted in the upper registers and hyperactive in the lower registers? Because when we talk about hyperactive, that comes with anxiety, irritability, and dread. They feel nothing deeply positive. However, they feel every threat acutely. And this is survival mode as a chronic state, not an acute one. Another research on burnout and depersonalization from World Health Organization 2019. So in 2019, WHO officially classified burnout as an occupational phenomenon with three defining dimensions, that is, exhaustion, cynicism, or emotional distance from one's work and life, and reduced sense of personal efficacy. So, middle dimension, that is the emotional distance, is what most burnout interventions miss entirely. That is, holiday, sleep, and workload reduction address exhaustion. They do not address the learned emotional disconnection that the nervous system developed as a survival strategy. This is why majority of people who recover from burnout relapse within 12 months. They rested the body without reconnecting the emotional system. And again, to be honest, this is the missing piece in every burnout recovery plan that focuses only on rest and boundaries. Rest will restore the body. However, that emotional disconnect, that is the numbness or say flatness, the sense of watching your life from a distance, that requires a different kind of recovery entirely. It's like it requires rather reteaching the nervous system gradually and safely that it is allowed to feel again. That emotions are not threats to be managed. That joy is not a luxury to be earned. After all, the work is done. That being fully alive emotionally is not at all dangerous. It is the point. Now comes part 3. Emotional reconnection is the actual recovery mechanism. So what does real burnout recovery look like? Not the version the wellness industry sells, the version the research actually supports. So again, we will go into those researches on emotional reconnection and burnout recovery. Stanford and UC Berkeley says. So that is a 2022 longitudinal study from Stanford Center for Compassion and Altruism. Research tracked 400 individuals recovering from clinical burnout over 2 years. Those who engaged in emotion focused interventions, practices specifically designed to restore the emotional range, self compassion, and genuine felt connection, showed 73% lower relapse rates than those who received rest and boundary interventions alone. So now, does this make sense that yes, along with those boundaries or rest, when the emotional interventions also comes into picture, the relapse goes lower. Yeah. So the defining factor in sustained recovery was not how much they rested, it was whether they successfully rebuilt access to their own emotional experience. So, researchers coined the term emotional reconditioning, and the gradual supported process of reintroducing the nervous system to its full emotional range after a period of chronic suppression. Are you with me? Does this gives you some understanding? Again, don't think about which year what research, no, but however I'm giving the right records, and what most important is emotional connection is something is needed, which has been confirmed through this research. Now another research on dopamine, that meaning and recovery, that was done by Dr. Andrew Huberman, Stanford Neuroscience. He researched on the dopamine system, demonstrate that chronic stress depletes dopamine not only in the reward pathway, however, in the motivation and meaning making, again repeat, meaning making circuits of the brain. Critically, the dopamine is not restored by rest alone. It is restored by engagement with activities that carry genuine personal meaning, what neuroscientists call intrinsically motivated behavior. Intrinsically motivated behavior. This is precisely why someone can take a week's holiday. I repeat, a week's holiday from burnout and return just as depleted as they were earlier. They rested, right? They rested through the holidays. They enjoyed, they have fun, they had a get together. However, they did not re engage with anything that genuinely mattered to them at a felt emotional level. Meaning is not a luxury. The burnout brain can differ, and it is neurochemically necessary for recovery. That's why I often suggest that in a year, take out some time where you're giving that time for that emotional connection. Now, there are multiple ways to do that. Maybe we can talk about it sometime later. But yes, take out way that you get back to that emotional connection. And it's not that some exercise again or a to-do list to be done. There are ways to actually get back. And that's what that girl was back. And what got her back was not less swimming, it was reconnecting in a safe, unhurried way to the part of herself that had chosen swimming before it became an obligation. The girl who had jumped into the pool at the age of 6 because the water felt like freedom, that excitement, that enjoyment. Recovery was about finding that girl again, to go to that state where jumping in the pool was that excitement, not the performance, not something that, okay, somebody has suggested, not for the medals, not for the winning, the original feeling. And that is what emotional reconnections as a recovery practice looks like, returning carefully to the felt sense of what really, really matters, of what is yours, of what makes you feel like you rather than a function. Are you with me this thought? So I would like to mention real burnout recovery is not about doing less. I'm just summing it out. It is about feeling more of the right things, reconnecting to meaning, to the body, to the genuine emotion, to the parts of yourself that survival mode switched off. That is the work. That is what actually heals it. Okay, so are you all ready to do with that emotional reconnection practice? Like we always take one session. I mean, in our every session we take that practice, that guided experience. So this practice is specifically designed for people in emotional flatness. Like I said when I spoke to the girl, I mean, the only thing like, how do you feel? And the answer is, I don't feel anything. And it does not ask them to feel something dramatic. Okay? It's just asking them to notice those minute sensation of being alive. For someone in burnout, this is the most important practice in this, again, entire 30-day journey, because all these practices are based on the situation a particular individual is going through. So, whatever seems the situation, resonating with your current state, or whatever way you need help in, try to pick that up and try to practice that for some time. Be patient, be gentle. Don't, again, make it like a task. Move slowly. So today's practice is not about feeling more, it is about noticing what is still alive. Because even in the deepest burnout, like even in that girl's flatness, even in your exhaustion, there are small faint signals of being alive still present. Your nervous system never fully goes dark. We are just going to learn to tune the frequency back to them. Okay? And because even when the fire of emotional aliveness feels out, there are always that embers, and today we find them. Now, for with this, I would like you to completely stay away from your phone. If you are taking this session with the, through the phone, then probably put it somewhere and sit in a place where you are not disturbed. You're doing this practice along with me, not passive watching. Okay, so again, there are certain steps to follow. So we will be following the 5 step. The step one, signal the body that the emergency is over, even for now. That will help to reset, cortisol reset breath. So place one hand on your chest and one on your belly. Take a breath slow into the belly first and then the chest. So when you do that, you will see the sensation first coming in your belly and then the chest. And fill intensely the entire belly and chest with air. Hold for 4 counts. Hold 1, 2, 3, 4. Then exhale. So it will be twice as inhale. So we count for 4, hold for 4, and now exhale for 8. Hope it's clear. So when you exhale, count for 8. Repeat this 4 times. Now, this extended exhale directly activates the parasympathetic nervous system and it begins to lower the cortisol within just 90 seconds. So, you are not relaxing by willpower, you are using the biology correctly. You are giving your HPA axis a physiological signal that the threat has passed, you can relax now. You are safe enough to step out of survival just for right now. Okay? We just did for twice, we'll do for 2 times more. Hold for 4, exhale for 8. Then again, inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 8. Okay. We did little speedily because there is a limitation for the sessions. Probably are extending the sessions for 45 minutes to 1 hour sometimes because of the intensity of these exercises, which is important. So when you are doing, just come back to the recording, go through it, every process very slowly. Okay. Don't do in a hurry. Now comes the step two, the micro joy scan. That is, don't look for fire, look for warmth, that gentle warmth. With your eyes soft or closed, let your mind move slowly through your recent days. Not looking for happiness, not looking for gratitude, looking for any moment, how much ever small it is, whether something shifted even slightly from flat toward alive. Assume it's a piece of music. Assume a face of your loved one, a moment of sunlight, a conversation that cracked something open for a second, the taste of something, laughter that surprised you. These are your embers. They are not dramatic. They are not the life you think you should be living. They are just signals that the capacity for aliveness is still in there, waiting. One by one, let them surface. Give this step 60 to 90 seconds, or say 2 minutes. Do it gently. Just a gentle reminder, don't dismiss the smaller one. In burnout, even the smallest is everything. Okay? Now, step three, name the disconnection without judgment. So, honesty is beginning of return. Now, gently, without being self critic, without that self criticism, complete this sentence in your mind. You don't have to write. The part of my life where I feel most disconnected from myself right now is, don't analyze it, don't problem solve it, just name it. Because you cannot reconnect to something you haven't first honestly acknowledged you have lost contact with. The naming is not shaming or defeating. The naming is the first step of the path back. The part of my life where I feel most disconnected from myself right now is dash. Fill in the blank. Now, step four, the one intentional aliveness choice. So, here we are going to take that one micro decision toward feeling every single day. Now, ask yourself, what is that one thing? Again, don't worry how much ever small it is. What is that one thing I could do tomorrow. That is entirely for the felt experience of being alive. Not productive, not useful, not for anyone else's benefit. Something that exists purely because it makes you feel like you. So, research shows that consistent daily microdoses of intrinsically meaningful activity begin to rebuild dopamine pathways just within 2 weeks. You don't need to overhaul your life. You need that 5 minutes every day of something that is genuinely yours, that you feel connected. It can be anything. Now, step five, that is the commitment statement. Say this and first thing, mean it. Hands on chest, breathe and say quietly, just in to yourself, I am not broken. I am a nervous system that has been in survival for too long. And I am giving myself right now, starting today, permission to begin to come back very safely, gently, not all at once. At the pace my body sets, I am coming back. Is there anything that you find from this practice? If you feel like, you can share it in the chat. With this, the 25 days, and today we have reached what I think is the most important truth of this entire journey. That exhaustion at its deepest level is not about how much you have done, it is about how long you have been doing it while disconnected from yourself. So that's where we saw the example of that girl did burn out because she swam too many hours. She burned out because she forgot over the years of performing that she was the one who had chosen to swim. She's allowed to love it, to enjoy it, not some like a task which has to be, done at a strict timeline. That the water was originally hers. She could feel that cooling effect, the calmness underwater. And so many of you are living the same story. This was a case of simple swimming. It can be anything. I met a girl who was brilliant in singing. And I think after she shared that event with me, that after her college days, she completely stopped singing. She was the one, like probably, um, you know, 20 years back, the story is like she was the one who used to hear the audio, she used to write the song, she used to practice each and every raga of that song, the, high note, low note, everything. She used to try to make it perfect. She suddenly left music. She don't hear music. She don't do anything related to music. What is that? That is something that we just spoke about, that girl related to swimming. So in your careers, in your relationship, your daily life, doing everything that's expected, beautifully, competently, reliably, while a part of you watches from a distance and wonders when it gets to, come back to their true self, the true want. And here's what I know from working with people in this exact place. This practice I gave you today will help. Do it every day, you will notice a difference. To make it ease, maybe you can put that step in a way you can, you know, recall it. And then try to put that question clearly and then do the practice. Because the cortisol patterns that created the disconnection in the first place, the deep survival programming, the identity wounds, the nervous system that learned that rest was never safe, those do not fully reset from a 5-minute daily practice alone. That is also something I can say, because people might come up saying that, okay, I am doing it, but however, I'm not getting the required results, desired results. So definitely, these all experiences are long term, which we have been going through for years, days, years. Like I always say, it's not about matter of days or months or so, but it can be for years together. And definitely, that small practice definitely won't work. And like every person has the requirement, and the practice has to be designed based on that particular requirement by understanding that actual stage that they are in. They need that sustained, skilled, deeply personalized work. This is not something that everyone fit model. Yes, the practice would help to be little stable. However, everyone's situation is different. The solution has to be also personalized. So that's where this work that understands not just your mind, your body, your nervous system, your energy field, your innate wiring, and work that does not only give you tools to manage the burnout, however, actually dismantles the conditions that created it. So that's what I provide in my one on one program. We work with all of it. We map your specific burnout pattern, your specific conditioning, your specific condition. Today we are talking about burnout, but we have been speaking for, we have been connecting with each other for 24 days, and we touched upon a lot of situations. So for all of this, and for today's, when the disconnection began, what it is protecting you from, how to rebuild that emotional aliveness, feeling that liveliness again without crash and collapse cycle that keeps so many people stuck. So using this psychological frameworks, DMIT profiling, all of this adds up and really helps into this the process. And I have seen people coming back and saying, I feel like I came back to my life. I feel less tired. Like the girl stepping into the water and feeling for the first time in years that it was me. Yeah, it was hers again. So, if anything, if something in today's session, name what you have been living, if you recognized yourself in that girl's flatness, in the hollow functioning, in the number you put in the comments earlier, or in your mind, whatever number you have, I want to hear from you. I would love to work with you, understand It's just a simple, safe space to talk about freely your mind out, to understand, and this is the place where we begin. So, the link is available in the description to book the discovery call. No pressure, just a safe space. All right. And you showed up today. Yeah. That is not a small thing. That is the first act of someone who has decided to stop surviving and start living. Tomorrow is day 26. We are almost at the end of week 4. And the last 2 days of the week are the ones I have been building toward all month. So don't stop now. The most important part is right here. So today, just be a little gentler with yourself and, you know, be calm. You have earned it. See you tomorrow. Bye for now.